Even though it's a really nice wedding, the atmosphere always feels rural when those two are around.
Just as you said, it's really funny that they came to our wedding. They didn't seem to realize that a lavish wedding like this isn't a place for farmers.
It's really frustrating dealing with people from the countryside because common sense doesn't seem to apply.
Hey, after the wedding is over, you know what to do, right?
Oh, you don't have to maintain any family ties or anything.
That's a relief. I don't want to go to their distant and dirty house, and it's a hassle to call them regularly, so I appreciate you saying that.
We need to keep our distance from them now, or else they might ask us to take care of them in their old age or borrow money from us. It's better to start now.
It's amazing you can say such harsh things.
Yeah, I can't stand dealing with those old guys who don't understand common sense.
Sean, my older brother, who is on the fast track to success, hosted a wedding with 1,200 guests. Even in such a joyous occasion, he and his wife talked badly about my parents. My parents have no idea about their son and his wife's true nature. So, I decided to show them the true nature of my brother's couple.
Henry, Mary, when did you get here?
Naturally, my brother and his wife panicked when they realized my parents were behind them. The plan went well, but the real test starts now.
Time to leave, everyone.
My usually quiet father suddenly burst into laughter, leaving my brother bewildered. It seems my brother still hasn't realized that he's already heading for disaster with my father's words. I'm Lucia, 27 years old. I work in the HR department of a general corporation. My father and mother are farmers in the countryside. When I went to college and started living in the city, I was constantly surprised by the differences in lifestyle. I'm not making fun of country life in any way. My father, Henry, and my mother, Mary, were kind, and they worked hard and owned quite a large field until I graduated from college. They are now in their 60s and their farm is smaller. Furthermore, in the countryside, neighbors are close, and I now realize that it was a good environment for children to grow up in, as it allowed for real connections with people. So, I never felt restricted. However, my older brother Sean seemed to have a different perspective than me.
I can finally escape from the countryside full of fields.
He is 5 years older than me, and he left home when I was in middle school, right when he got into college. When I left my home, I felt a sense of nostalgia, but my brother gave the impression that he wanted to leave the house as soon as possible, even if it was just for a day. I still remember that he looked happier when he found out he could leave home than when he passed the college entrance exam. I actually like the countryside, though.
I think the countryside smell of dad and mom suits you. But I'm different from you.
I'm used to my brother's condescending remarks, so I don't feel anything no matter what he says. My brother is exceptionally talented, and he got into a top-tier university. In comparison, my academic performance is just average. It's almost natural for the older sibling to look down on the younger, less capable one. Also, he acted like a good kid in front of our parents.
Dad, it's Sunday tomorrow, so I'll help with the farm work.
You don't have to do that.
But isn't farm work tough?
We have plenty of part-time workers, so it's fine.
I see. Well, if you ever need help, just let me know.
Knowing my brother's true nature, I learned that this is what they call getting along with others. Furthermore, my parents, who were unaware of their son's true nature, often boasted about him to others outside of the house.
Even though neither Mary nor I are very bright, I can't believe someone as smart as Sean was born.
Do they say things like even a crow can give birth to a hawk in situations like this?
Even my usually quiet father becomes slightly more talkative when it comes to bragging about his son. When I was a child, I used to snicker when I heard my parents boasting about my brother to others. I was the only one who knew Sean's true nature, but I didn't tell my parents. I thought they wouldn't believe me because they were in such a state. Also, our parents rarely directly praised their son, and they never ignored me just because I wasn't as good as him, so I thought it was fine as it was. Well, sometimes it's essential to give up, and there are times when it's better not to know, and I probably realized that without even realizing it. Sean, who had become a college student, seemed to be enjoying his newfound freedom, like a bird that had been locked in a small cage for so long but was now soaring in the open sky. On his social media, there were photos of him having fun with friends, mixed with snapshots of him with different women. These women changed regularly. If these women were his girlfriends, then it meant he was changing girlfriends about every 3 months. My successful brother seemed to be quite the ladies' man. After graduating from college, my brother got a job at a bank. With his intelligence and social skills he had honed since childhood, he excelled at work, earned good evaluations, and was on the fast track to becoming an elite banker. The elite gentleman rarely contacted me or my parents after he started working, and he stopped coming back home altogether.
Hello, Lucia. Haven't you heard from Sean?
He hasn't contacted me at all.
He never calls or shows his face, and I wonder how he's doing.
Have you tried calling him?
I occasionally try, but he never picks up. He must be really busy with work.
It had been about 3 years since my brother last contacted us. Even his last contact was just by chance when he happened to answer a call from our mother. I couldn't believe that he couldn't spare a moment to make a single phone call in 3 years, no matter how busy he was, despite being an elite. But our parents, who were unaware of my brother's true nature, believed that he was working hard. After hanging up the phone with my mother, I let out a small sigh. A few days after the call with my mother, she called me again.
Lucia, there was a call from Sean.
He actually called you. Is something wrong?
He's apparently getting married.
What? Sean is getting married. Upon hearing that my brother was getting married, I unintentionally raised my voice louder than I had in a long time.
He and his fiancée are coming over next month to meet us. Can you come home, Lucia?
I'll try to make it if I can.
Great. I understand. Please let me know.
After hanging up the phone, I recalled my brother's condescending attitude towards me. However, my brother had been in the workforce for 10 years since becoming an adult and was now 32 years old. It was different from the time I was thinking about. Could it be that he had become a bit more mature in character since then? In any case, marriage is a joyous occasion. I decided to go back home to convey my congratulations to my brother at the wedding meeting. During the wedding meeting, I would be surprised to find that John not only hadn't changed since his student days but had also powered up since then. On the day of the wedding meeting, he and his fiancée returned to his parents' home for the first time in 3 years. I, who had returned the previous night, welcomed them at the entrance along with my mother.
Welcome. The journey must have been long and tiring.
No, not at all. It's so peaceful and lovely here.
Mila, Sean's fiancée, was 1 year older than me and had a distinctly urban vibe. To someone like me, who was accustomed to country life, her smile seemed to shine brightly. Her manner of speaking was polite. However, although her expression was smiling and her tone was gentle, I couldn't help but feel that there was something behind her eyes that wasn't smiling. After a brief greeting at the entrance, my mother and I led Sean and Mila into the living room.
Wait, where's Dad?
When we entered the living room, my father was nowhere to be seen, so my brother was surprised and looked at my mother.
He's in the nearby field right now. I'll call him right away. Mila, I'm sorry for making you wait.
No worries, there's no rest for farm work.
Sean and Mila sat down on the cushions, and my mother went to the field to call my father. I sat in front of them and became their conversation partner until our father arrived. With our parents absent, Sean reverted to his usual self.
Even though I told him we were coming for the wedding meeting, he's doing farm work. What did I tell you? In the countryside, common sense doesn't apply.
You're right. Your mother's just in her usual clothes too. We dressed up, and we look like fools.
Dad will come in his work clothes, all covered in dirt, I bet. Don't laugh when you see him.
That's just not possible, right? If I were told that in advance, I might have laughed instead.
You're underestimating the countryside. He's definitely coming all dirty.
Do they not realize I'm sitting right in front of them? When my mother left, the two of them started bad-mouthing my parents. It seemed like Sean's personality hadn't changed a bit. Moreover, his fiancée Mila seemed to have a similar personality to his. Thinking about it as if I had two brothers, I felt a dull headache or a sense of heaviness in my head. Furthermore, instead of becoming more mature in character over the 10 years since he became an adult, it seemed like my brother's thinking had taken a turn for the worse in the city, and he had powered up. He used to look down on me, but he never looked down on his parents. Until now. I might be fine with him looking down on me since I'm not that capable, but I couldn't tolerate him speaking ill of the parents who raised us. Hey, Sean, don't speak ill of Dad and Mom like that.
Haha, you've become quite the talker, haven't you? When we were kids, you could only stay quiet no matter what I said.
You work in HR at a small company, right? Lucia, you are quite different from Sean, huh?
It seems they noticed me, and that's a relief. By addressing me, the target of their bad-mouthing shifted from my parents to me. The two of them who looked down on me seemed to be having quite a bit of fun. After a while, we heard footsteps coming from the hallway. Sean and Mila quickly put on light smiles, stopped bad-mouthing me, and prepared for our parents' entrance.
Sorry for the wait.
No worries. Thank you for taking time off work.
Seeing my father in his work attire, my brother's fiancée went from a gentle smile to slightly narrowing her eyes and raising the corners of her mouth. Sean, who seemed to have sensed something, nudged his fiancée with his elbow to keep it from being noticed by my parents.
We're sorry for keeping you waiting.
It's totally fine. We were chatting with Lucia.
Oh, what were you talking about?
They were actually laughing about your attire for today's wedding meeting. It's just so out of place. I relayed the conversation to my parents as a subtle resistance against my brother. I knew that something like this could be easily brushed off. I knew that he could easily brush off something like this.
Come on. I didn't say it like that, did I? I just told Mila not to worry about how Dad and Mom are dressed because they'll be working on the farm. I said that so Mila doesn't think she's not welcome, you know. And also, Dad and Mom should make a bit more effort since it's a wedding speech. Do I look bad?
Well, maybe you have a point there.
I apologize for our lack of consideration, Mila. We've been living in the countryside for so long, and we're used to going about at our own pace.
No, it's okay. I'm actually happy that you're just being yourselves.
While Sean had been joking and bad-mouthing his parents earlier, he unintentionally created a situation where his parents had to apologize. Furthermore, his fiancée promptly supported my mother's apology, even gaining a favorable impression from my parents. I had resisted them with small acts of defiance in the past, but I had never succeeded. Once again, I felt that I couldn't measure up to the two of them and resigned myself to sipping my tea. However, Sean's actions didn't stop here.
Lucia, why did you say it like that? Dad and Mom might misunderstand, you know?
Stop, Sean. We're here for the wedding meeting today.
Right, I see.
Lucia probably got a little jealous, thinking that her big brother was being taken by Mila, I guess.
Is that so? Lucia is cute, isn't she?
With this, I became the villain, and Sean and Mila were seen as forgiving and kind people. Overwhelmed by a sense of defeat, I drank my tea even though I wasn't thirsty. Unable to say anything as the villain, I watched the conversation between the couple and our parents continue without me. As I impatiently glanced at the clock on the wall, my brother approached me with a request.
Oh, wait. I had something I wanted to ask Lucia.
What is it? I replied coldly like a sulking child. However, he continued without being shaken.
We're planning to have a grand wedding with as many people attending as possible. But there might be people who can't come due to various reasons like the venue being far away or having children. So, we're thinking of having the wedding online.
And?
Since you work in HR, you probably handle job interviews online, right? I think it would be smoother for you to handle various things than for us to do it.
So, you want me to handle the online part of the wedding?
What's this about online?
Our parents, who didn't know about online weddings, had a question mark floating above their heads. Since our parents didn't even touch computers, I thought it couldn't be helped. It's about making sure people can watch your wedding on their computers. That way, even people who can't come to the venue can watch your wedding from anywhere in the country.
Isn't that the same as a video?
It's not a recording, it's live streaming, like a live broadcast of a baseball game.
That sounds great. Sean's wedding will be broadcasted all over the country.
Not everyone in the country can watch the wedding video, but it seemed like my parents had a general understanding of the online wedding. They were quite enthusiastic, thinking that they could show off their son on this special occasion to many people.
Could you do us a favor? We have other preparations to take care of.
And we don't need a gift from you. Please, we're begging you.
Sean and Mila bowed their heads to me. Honestly, I didn't want to help with their wedding. However, I had become the villain due to the issue with our parents' clothing. Now Sean and Mila were bowing to me, while our parents were appealing to me with their expressions. If I refused here, I would be even more of a villain. I understand. But if you want to make it grand and there are many people who can attend, don't you think it will be a lot of work for each person to set up online? Even young job seekers sometimes have trouble with connections.
Is there a better way?
Setting up connections for each person would be difficult. So how about renting a rental meeting room where you can also have meals? You can make it like a public viewing. Finding a suitable place might be a bit of a hassle, but rental meeting rooms have video conferencing equipment, and if you choose a cheap one, it won't cost more than $200 a day.
All right, let's go with that. Just as expected from the HR department. You can rely on you.
Then, can you tell me the approximate locations of people who can't come to the wedding and the contact information of the wedding planner in charge? I'll take care of the rest. Sean quickly agreed to my proposal. Indeed, my brother was an elite. And so, unwillingly, I ended up helping with his wedding. As for the meals prepared at the online wedding venue, is it okay to lower the quality? The number of participants is increasing rapidly, you know?
Just as I thought. Once people know they can watch my wedding from anywhere, this is it. People with promising futures are different. I won't lower the quality. I said I want it grand, right?
Okay then, the number of venues has increased to 10. Is that fine?
Yay. If we're going to do it, let's go all out and accept everyone. It'll be more exciting that way. Besides, with so many participants, we can expect some generous gifts, so we should be able to recover some of the wedding expenses, right?
Sean and I began to have frequent discussions about the wedding over the phone. My brother, being an elite banker with a good income, was excited about the wedding, expecting a large number of attendees and generous gifts. As for the wedding itself, even small changes in food and items could easily add up to tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, causing significant financial fluctuations. His sense of money had become skewed, and he started disregarding the budget. While it might have been a good idea to caution him as a family member, he was convinced it was for the best, so I decided to let it go. As the date of my brother's wedding approached, I visited the venue and had them set up a computer at their home to check how the wedding would look and feel online. How does it look? We have cameras set up in the front, capturing the whole scene, and we also have 3 additional cameras for close-ups. As for microphones, we've placed them at your seats, around the MC, and scattered throughout the venue. To make it clear for the participants, we've labeled the microphones with easy-to-read tags. Please be mindful not to share embarrassing stories around the microphones. Well, it's a wedding, so you should be careful with your words regardless of the microphones. Also, we've marked the positions of the cameras for your convenience.
That's fine. It feels like a celebrity wedding, doesn't it?
The venue can hold up to 300 people, and with the online setup, it's on par with a celebrity-level event.
Well, it's my wedding, so it should be at this scale. Lucia, you should be grateful to me. You wouldn't have had the chance to be involved in such a glamorous wedding if it weren't for me, with your rural background and all.
Sure, you're right. And for now, we can have a conversation, but on the actual day, you won't be able to hear the participants. Instead, they can leave comments, so check them after the ceremony. Well then, I'm going to talk to the equipment team over there for a moment, so just wait here. I felt stressed by my brother's usual condescending remarks and moved away from the camera. Why do I have to do something like this for my brother's sake, even on my day off? As I sighed with annoyance, I overheard my brother and his wife's conversation through the earphones that I had left on.
Even though it's such a splendid wedding, your parents won't ruin the atmosphere, will they?
You knows.
They wouldn't dare come in casual clothes to a wedding like this, right?
I can say that with certainty. We should tell them, and also be mindful of their behavior during the ceremony.
That's true. I'm worried they might eat messily or say something tactless to the other guests.
I hope they have some accident on the day of the wedding, and we only find out about it 3 days later.
Ha ha ha. It would be nice if something like that happened. To be honest, would your parents, who live in a rural farmhouse, really come to something this extravagant? If it were them, I'd probably join from some online venue to avoid making such a mistake.
They're coming because they're from a rural background. They live in the countryside, so common sense doesn't apply to them.
The camera wasn't capturing their faces, but the audio was still connected. Unaware of this, Sean and Mila began speaking ill of my parents again. I clenched my teeth and felt anger rise within me as I listened to them bad-mouthing my parents. But in the next moment, I realized something. With this newfound knowledge, I might be able to show Sean and Mila a painful lesson, so instead of frustration, I felt confident and let out a snort. On the day of the wedding, the venue with a capacity for 300 people was almost full. The ceremony was glamorous, and above all, Mila's dress was beautiful. If I didn't know her inner self, I would surely offer my heartfelt blessings. I half-heartedly applauded several times. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, and Sean and Millie began to visit the tables of the participants. For the management of the online wedding, I had arranged my seat near the equipment staff at the venue. Some might think it's unnecessary to treat a family member's wedding like this, but I found it more relaxing this way.
Sorry for making you handle the online management during the wedding. Well, we don't need a gift, and since you can enjoy the food, there's no complaint, right?
Yes, you're right. No complaints here.
So, how many people are currently participating online?
We have 10 venues, and each has around 80 to 100 people. Additionally, there are about 20 individuals connecting from their homes.
With nearly 300 people at the venue, that means around 1,200 people are participating in our wedding online. Nice, nice. Just as I expected.
Close to 1,000 people participated in the online wedding. Although their images were projected in a corner of the venue, the screens were divided into dozens, making it clear that many people were present, but their faces were too small to see clearly. They were highly satisfied with having over 1,000 participants. However, there was one thing my bro and his wife were dissatisfied with.
Even though it's such a great wedding, the atmosphere still feels rural where they are.
My parents' seats were far away, and I was the only one here, so Sean and Mila started speaking ill of my parents again. In this way, the fact that their parents had raised them and allowed them to have such a wedding didn't seem to register with them. I tapped my ear lightly with my index finger.
As you said, it's unbelievable they actually came all the way from the farm. They still don't seem to get that this extravagant wedding is out of place for them.
Seriously, rural folks just don't seem to grasp common sense. It's frustrating.
Hey, you know what we'll do after the wedding, right?
Yay, we don't have to bother with keeping up family ties.
Great. I don't want to visit their distant and dirty house, and regular phone calls are a hassle. So, it's a relief that you feel the same way.
We'd be in trouble if they start asking for help in their old age or demanding money. We need to create some distance from now on.
How you can say such harsh things?
I can't believe we have to deal with those clueless old folks.
Once again, I began to worry if they couldn't see me.
Lucia, let's be real. You're never going to catch someone like me, a perfect human being. So just stay single for life. Take care of Dad and Mom instead of me, okay?
I felt relieved that they could see me now. There are so many things I want to say, but it seems it's not my turn.
You won't have to take care of us, so don't worry.
The venue was bustling with activity, but I and my brother could clearly hear our father's familiar voice. His father's voice came from behind, and Sean turned around at lightning speed. Suddenly, her husband turned around, and Mila followed suit, both looking surprised.
Henry, Mary, when did you get here?
When Sean told Lucia to stay single for life and take care of us instead of her perfect brother.
Upon hearing my mother's words, Sean and Mila exchanged glances. Their teamwork was impressive, and I thought they were compatible as a couple.
Perhaps it sounded wrong, but there was a context to our conversation. Lucia said she probably couldn't get married. So we talked about the possibility of her staying single and taking care of Dad and Mom instead of me.
That's right. If you misunderstood it, we apologize. Besides, it's so noisy here. We'd welcome living together, you know?
Sean and Milo lied effortlessly. Up until now, my parents would have believed their words. However, their lies no longer held any sway.
But before that, you were talking about how you wondered if we could even come as rural folks, and that people from the countryside lack common sense, right?
What? Were you listening from an earlier point in the conversation? You tricked us.
Don't say unkind things. We were asked when we got here, so we just answered that it was a little while ago. We didn't lie.
Then why did our conversation?
My father remained silent, turning his face to the side. He had wireless earphones in his ears.
I can't believe it.
My brother turned around at lightning speed again, this time looking at me. With a triumphant smile, I pointed to the computer I was using to manage the information for the online wedding right in front of me.
You picked up the sound with that computer and sent it to Dad and Mom's earphones, didn't you?
That's right. So, all of your conversation from earlier was completely exposed. When I tapped my ear during the conversation with my brother, it wasn't because my ear hurt. It was a signal to my parents, who were in a distant location, to put on their earphones. With my signal, my parents put on their earphones, and they heard every word of the conversation between their son and his wife. Now, no excuse would work. I'm sorry for making you do something strange, Dad, Mom.
It's okay. When we heard that audio, well...
Audio? What are you talking about?
Oh, didn't we do a test for the online wedding the other day? It's the conversation from back then. They were saying things like you guys would ruin the atmosphere and that it would be nice if you had an accident to prevent you from coming to the ceremony.
You recorded that conversation?
Yes. More accurately, I recorded the video to check the image quality and angles later. When I moved away from the camera, that's when you two started that conversation, and it got captured in the video. In the eyes of our parents, my brother was a respectable person, and no matter how much I talked about his true nature, they wouldn't believe me. So, I decided to let them hear that audio first. However, even after that, it seemed that our parents still couldn't believe it. That's why, with this earphone strategy, I wanted them to see my brother's true nature firsthand, right before their eyes.
We've been tricked all along.
Lucia, haven't we hurt you too? We're sorry.
Dad and Mom aren't to blame, you know? You never really showed favoritism towards Sean, and it's just that he was good at lying and acting. My brother, whose true nature had been revealed to our parents, couldn't make any excuses, and for the first time, he failed to evade responsibility. In his panic from the unfamiliar situation, he made a mistake in his next move.
Dad and Mom have been delighted with my lies and acting all along, haven't they? You must have thought I was a good son, right? So, you should be grateful.
That's right. Sean is an elite banker. That's why 1,200 people are celebrating our wedding like this. You two are out of place at this ceremony. Yet, you actually came all the way from the farm. It's so laughable.
Sean and Mila changed their strategy. They realized there was no way out and began openly insulting my parents. They probably aimed to sever ties with their parents, avoid taking care of them in their old age, and eliminate the hassle of dealing with relatives. Their mistake wasn't in deciding to cut ties with their parents at this point. It was in speaking it out loud.
Ha ha ha. That's right. We're totally out of place at this wedding.
Our usually reserved and quiet father began laughing loudly, making my brother feel terrified. He hunched down slightly and leaned towards his wife.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today for my son, but he turned out to be such a despicable person. I apologize. We will formally apologize later. So for today, everyone, let's leave from here.
Upon his words, the participants of the ceremony who had been displayed on the projector all left simultaneously. The participants at the venue couldn't hear our conversation, so the commotion caused by the online participants leaving grew louder.
What's going on? Why are the participants leaving?
Why are the participants leaving?
Like the participants at the venue, the confused Sean and Mila couldn't understand the situation and were in a state of panic. Ignoring the two, my father left the area and headed toward the entrance of the venue, with my mother following him. On their way out of the venue, it seemed our father was asked about what had happened by an acquaintance, as he stopped for a moment to talk to someone. However, after a few minutes, the conversation ended, and our parents walked away again, leaving the venue. As people who heard the story told others, and those others talked to even more people, the situation quickly spread throughout the venue. Participants who learned the circumstances began leaving one after another.
Hey, what's going on? Tell me.
Didn't I explain this before? There are microphones installed all over the venue. And those microphones don't necessarily mean handheld or lapel mics.
No way.
Yeah. To save on the number of microphones, the conversations around here were picked up by the microphone on this computer, which manages the online wedding. The microphone's performance isn't great, but since it's a place with equipment, and I'm the only family member here, it wasn't necessary to prepare good microphones. And I didn't need to indicate the microphone's location. I thought we didn't need to prepare fancy microphones or signs to indicate the microphone positions.
So, you mean our conversation was heard by the online participants?
I told you before, right? To avoid embarrassing conversations at the wedding. And since everyone left at Dad's command, I think they already understand. The fact that 1,200 people attended this wedding isn't because you are an elite, you know? Dad just went overboard and gathered people.
Huh?
When our father heard about the online wedding, he thought he could show off his son's triumphant moment to many people. Therefore, before fully understanding how online weddings worked, he promoted it heavily to his acquaintances. He used to run a pretty large farm in the countryside, and he had been doing it on the same land for a long time. As a result, he had a wide network in local government, organizations, and even companies. So, when he excitedly talked about his son's wedding, many people who were associated with him felt obligated to attend their wedding. And now, he said they should leave, so the participants followed his words and left the online wedding. Among the 300 participants at the venue, there were many who attended because they were the father's son, and many of them, knowing the situation, left as well. Sean, too, had been too excited about his wedding and had been accommodating to the increasing number of participants. Being on the fast track to success as an elite, he thought that if he held an online wedding, even people with distant relationships would join, and he expected around 1,000 people to attend. However, hardly anyone attended to genuinely celebrate the brothers' wedding. People were leaving both from the venue and online.
Everyone, where are you going? Today is my wedding.
Why? Didn't you come to celebrate us?
Sean didn't have the energy to stop the people leaving, and he collapsed onto his knees. His wife, although not speaking, stood still and continued to shed tears. In the end, there were only 40 participants left at the venue, and only 4 online. This was the number of participants at the brothers' wedding after subtracting the father's influence. With this number, there's no need to manage the online part anymore. I'm going home too. The food was delicious. Even though the ceremony was still ongoing, I decided to leave. After all, despite having eaten, I didn't feel full. It's a common occurrence when you're not used to a fancy meal. So, I decided to take out some beef bowl and soup on my way home. As a result of the extravagant wedding, the expenses amounted to $150,000. In contrast, the online wedding, with its simple cuisine and minimal favors, didn't cost much. However, preparing a venue for 300 people and hosting an online event for over 1,000 participants still led to significant expenses, even after cutting costs wherever possible. Sean had hopes of receiving congratulatory gifts from the over 1,000 attendees, and he seemed to think that if he could cover about 50,000 of the 150,000 himself, it would be sufficient. I believe covering a third of the wedding expenses is quite admirable. However, the brother didn't end up paying just that. Because our father got angry with him and left, the congratulatory gifts didn't come through. As a result, they had to cover almost the entire cost themselves. Paying $150,000 is tough for a man of the age of 32, even if he was an elite. Mila had quit her job, relying on the income of her elite husband. But as soon as the wedding was over, she started looking for a job again. Sean, on the other hand, had to work hard to make ends meet, despite having quit his job. During the wedding, among the 40 people who remained at the venue and the 4 who stayed online, it seemed that some were his colleagues. Therefore, what happened at the wedding quickly spread to his workplace. Witnessing such disgrace and unable to continue working, he left the prestigious bank where he was on a fast track. He started looking for a new job immediately, but with his track record reset, he fell off the elite path and found himself on a more ordinary career track. Consequently, his income decreased significantly, and he had to work tirelessly to cover the expenses of the grand wedding. This is the consequence of his arrogance and his attempt to get married without a trace of gratitude towards his parents. After paying that amount, I hope he lives with the right attitude, showing gratitude to his parents, and without becoming conceited. After the wedding, my father went around apologizing to the people involved. It might have seemed like both our father and the others had a terrible time because of his son, but apparently that wasn't the case. My father had always been quiet, and he was seen as intimidating by those around him. However, after this incident, it seems that he started talking to people more and even laughing loudly or apologizing for his mistakes. I don't know if this was the trigger, but since Sean's wedding, my father has become more sociable, and he has started laughing more often. My life went back to normal, with no significant changes. However, knowing that I won't be looked down upon by Sean anymore, I find that quite pleasing.